The knock came just after midnight, sharp and deliberate, echoing through the silence of my empty apartment. I thought it was another noise complaint. Maybe the neighbors had finally had enough of my restless music or late-night pacing. But when I opened the door and saw the man standing there, the world seemed to pause. He was a cop, tall, confident, with that kind of calm strength that fills a room before he even says a word. His uniform was damp from the rain, his badge catching the faint light from the hallway. "Jake Miller?" he asked, voice steady, professional. "Yeah," I replied, trying not to sound nervous. "Is something wrong?" He looked at me for a moment, too long maybe, before answering. "We got a call from your neighbor. They heard shouting. Are you all right?" I didn't even remember shouting. Maybe I had. The last few weeks had been a blur. My breakup, the sleepless nights, the feeling that something inside me was coming undone. I nodded too quickly. "I'm fine." False alarm. But Liam, that was his name, I'd learn later, didn't look convinced. He took a slow breath, glanced past me into my apartment, then back into my eyes. "Mind if I step in for a minute?" I should have said no. Should have told him it was none of his business. But something in his tone, not authority but genuine concern, made me step aside. He walked in quietly, scanning the room like someone used to reading chaos. Empty bottles on the counter, a half-finished painting on the floor, the kind of silence that feels too heavy to belong in a home. "Rough night?" he asked, not looking at me. "You could say that," I muttered. He nodded, still looking around, then finally turned back to me. "Listen, I'm not here to get you in trouble. Just wanted to make sure you're okay." I laughed under my breath. Okay is relative. That made him smile, just a flicker, but enough to warm the room a little. I remember thinking he had one of those smiles that could break through walls. We talked for a few minutes about nothing, really. The weather, my dog that used to sleep by the couch, the way the city always felt lonelier at night. He didn't pry, didn't judge, just listened, and in some strange way that was exactly what I needed. When he finally left, I thought that would be the end of it, just another passing moment. But I couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he saw me when I didn't even know how to see myself anymore. The next morning, the sun felt different, softer somehow. I went for a run, something I hadn't done in months, and halfway down the block, I saw him again. Liam, standing by his patrol car, coffee in hand, looking up from his notepad as if he'd been waiting. "You live around here?" he asked, smiling this time. "Apparently so do you," I said. He chuckled, that low, effortless kind of laugh that lingers. "You seemed a little out of it last night. I wanted to make sure you're really okay." I shrugged. "Depends on the day." He studied me for a second, like he was trying to read a story written in invisible ink. "Sometimes it helps to talk," he said softly. "Doesn't have to be about anything big. Just talk." Something about the way he said it, no pressure, no pretense, made me want to. We ended up sitting on the hood of his car for almost an hour, talking about our jobs, our families, how hard it is to admit when you're lonely. He told me he'd grown up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, and how wearing the uniform sometimes made him feel like he had to be someone he wasn't, always strong, always in control. I told him about the relationship I just ended, how it wasn't really about love, but about trying to fit into a mold that never felt like mine. When I looked up, he was staring at me. Not with pity, but understanding. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" he asked. "All the time," I said quietly. He nodded. "Yeah, me too." There was something about that moment. Two people who had no reason to trust each other, yet somehow did, that felt like the beginning of something real. Days turned into weeks. Liam started stopping by more often, sometimes in uniform, sometimes in plain clothes. We'd grab coffee, talk about nothing and everything. He'd ask about my art, and I'd tease him about his terrible taste in music. Slowly, without either of us meaning to, the edges of our lives began to blur. But beneath it all, there was a quiet tension, the kind that hums under your skin, the kind that makes you aware of every word, every glance, every second that feels just a little too long. One night, we were sitting in my living room again, rain tapping against the window just like that first night. He was telling me about a call that went wrong. A kid he couldn't save. His voice cracked halfway through, and for the first time, I saw the weight he carried behind his calm exterior. Without thinking, I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. The silence that followed was electric, heavy and fragile all at once. He looked at me, eyes searching, uncertain. "Jake," he whispered. "I can't." "I know," I said, but my voice betrayed me. "I know." But knowing didn't make it any easier. We sat there, hand in hand, until the rain stopped, and when he finally stood to leave, he looked back. That same look he gave me the first night, and I knew, deep down, that something had shifted. I didn't see him for almost a month after that. He stopped coming by. No calls, no texts, just silence. I told myself it was for the best, that he had his world and I had mine. But every time I passed his usual patrol route, my chest tightened. Then, one night, there was another knock at my door. When I opened it, Liam was there, no uniform, no badge, just him. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said. I didn't move, didn't breathe. "I tried to ignore it," he continued, voice breaking. "Tried to tell myself it was wrong, that it couldn't happen. But every time I close my eyes, I see you standing in that doorway. My heart felt like it might burst. So what now?" He stepped closer, eyes glinting with something between fear and hope. "Now, I stopped pretending. And for the first time in my life, I didn't either." He kissed me, soft at first, then with a kind of desperation that felt like release, like confession. The world outside could have ended right then, and I wouldn't have noticed. When we pulled apart, he smiled, tears glinting in his eyes. "You changed something in me, Jake. Made me see parts of myself I'd buried for years." I touched his cheek, my voice trembling. "You did the same for me." That night, under the quiet hum of the city and the soft rhythm of our hearts, two men stopped hiding from the world, from themselves, from love. The days that followed felt unreal. Every detail of life, the air, the light, even the sound of passing cars, carried a new sharpness, as if the world itself had started to breathe again. Liam and I didn't define anything. We didn't talk about labels or futures or what it meant to anyone else. We just existed, together. Some nights, he'd show up after his shift, still smelling faintly of rain and coffee, his shoulders heavy from the day. I'd make tea, we'd sit on the balcony, and talk until the city fell asleep. Other nights, he'd crash on my couch, too tired to drive home. I'd watch him doze off, his face softer without the tension he wore in uniform, and wonder how someone could make me feel both safe and completely exposed at the same time. He told me stories from his patrols, the broken things he saw, the small acts of kindness that kept him believing. I told him about my art, how painting was the only way I knew to quiet my thoughts. He said once, half joking, that maybe I should paint him someday. I laughed, but secretly I already had. Still, there was a quiet fear between us. An unspoken question neither of us dared to ask. What happens when the world finds out? Started small. One evening, while we were walking downtown, a fellow officer spotted us. Liam stiffened immediately, his fingers slipping from mine as though burned. The other cop nodded politely, pretending not to notice anything unusual, but the silence that followed was deafening. When we got back to my apartment, I didn't say a word. I just set my keys down and sat on the couch. Liam stood near the door, hands on his hips, staring at the floor. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For what?" "For pulling away. For making it weird." "It's not weird," I said softly. "It's real. That's all." He nodded, his jaw tightening. "You don't understand. They watch everything. You slip once, they talk. You slip twice, they write you up. 3 times, he stopped, shaking his head. "I get it," I said. "You're protecting yourself." He looked at me then, eyes raw and tired. "I'm trying to protect you, too. But I didn't need protection. What I needed was honesty, and I could feel it breaking him to keep pretending that what we had didn't matter. He came closer, knelt in front of me, his hands trembling as they found mine. Jake, I've spent years building walls to keep people from seeing who I am. And then you... His voice cracked. You walked right through them like they were never there. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I smiled anyway. Then maybe it's time to stop rebuilding them. Weeks passed. We got better at pretending, at being careful. I'd see him in uniform, all stoic professionalism, and have to bite back the urge to smile too long. But every time our eyes met, even for a second, I saw it there. The quiet promise, the secret only we shared. Then came the night everything changed. I was closing up the small art gallery where I worked when I saw his car outside. Not the patrol car, but his old silver sedan. He looked tense, hands gripping the steering wheel. I walked over, opened the door. "Hey," I said. "What's wrong?" He looked at me with that same haunted expression I'd seen the night he told me about the kid he couldn't save. "They know," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. "Who?" "My captain. Maybe more." The world seemed to tilt for a second. I gripped the car door to steady myself. "What did they say?" "Nothing yet. But it's only a matter of time." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding through every word. "Someone saw us. They asked if I was seeing someone. I didn't answer fast enough." I sat in silence, my heart pounding. "Liam, we can figure this out." He laughed bitterly. "You don't get it. If they decide to make an example out of me, I'm done. Everything I've worked for, gone. And for what? For something I can't even tell them is real." The words hit hard. Something I can't even tell them is real. I pulled back slightly. "Is that what this is to you? Something you can't tell them is real?" He turned to me, his face full of pain. "No, Jake, that's the problem. It's too real." We sat there, the air thick with everything we couldn't say. Then he reached for my hand, his touch trembling. "I just need time," he whispered. Time for what? To figure out how to stop being afraid. Days turned into silence again. No calls, no visits. I threw myself into work, painting until my hands cramped, trying to drown out the ache. But nothing worked. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, standing in the rain that first night, the way his voice softened when he said my name. Then one evening I got a text. "Can I come over?" By the time I opened the door, he was already there. No uniform, no hesitation. Just Liam, raw, unguarded. "I told them," he said. I blinked. "Told them what?" "The truth. About us." My heart stopped. "Liam. They didn't take it well," he said with a broken laugh. "But I couldn't keep lying. Not about this. Not about you." I stared at him, speechless. He stepped closer, his eyes bright with something fierce and free. For the first time in my life, I said it out loud. I told them I love someone, and I meant it. Tears blurred my vision before I could stop them. "You. I love you, Jake," he said again, firmer this time, as if saying it made it real. "I don't care who knows." I didn't realize I was crying until he wiped the tears away with his thumb. "Are you sure?" I whispered. He smiled, that same rare, quiet smile that started it all. I've never been more sure of anything. And in that moment, all the fear, all the doubt, all the nights we spent pretending melted away. I pulled him close, and the world outside our door disappeared. There was only breath and heartbeat and the steady, unshakable truth that love, no matter how forbidden or fragile, is still love. When we finally broke apart, he laughed softly. "You know what's crazy? I thought telling the truth would ruin me, but it feels like the first time I've ever really lived." I smiled through my tears. "That's because it is." We stood there for a long time, the city lights flickering beyond the window, the air between us filled with something that felt like peace, hard-earned and beautiful. That night, I realized something I'd never understood before. Love doesn't always come to fix you. Sometimes it comes to show you who you already are. And maybe that's what Liam did for me. He didn't save me from my life, he showed me how to live it. The morning after Liam told his truth, the world outside felt quieter. Not because it had stopped judging, but because we had stopped listening. He stayed with me that night, neither of us sleeping much. We didn't need to. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of breath, warmth, and the quiet relief that comes when you stop running from yourself. When the first light of dawn spilled through the curtains, Liam sat up, watching it spread across the floor. "I don't know what happens next," he said. I turned toward him. "Then we find out. Together." He smiled, a soft, tired smile, and for the first time since I'd met him, his eyes looked completely unguarded. The days after his confession weren't easy. Word spread faster than either of us expected. Some of his colleagues avoided him. Others offered quiet nods of support when no one was watching. The whispers didn't bother him as much as I thought they would. "I used to think the uniform made me strong," he told me one afternoon as we sat by the river, our hands hidden in the space between us. "But it wasn't strength. It was armor. What I did, telling them. That's the first real act of courage I've ever had." I squeezed his hand gently. "You've always been brave, Liam. You just stopped hiding it." He looked at me, something fierce in his expression. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," I said, "but it's worth it." He leaned his head against mine, and for a while we just watched the water move, slow, steady, unstoppable. A week later, the department called him in for a meeting. He didn't tell me what it was about, but I could see the anxiety tightening his jaw. "You don't have to go alone," I said. "I do," he replied. "This is my fight. But I'll come back." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But when he walked out that morning, a small part of me couldn't stop fearing it might be the last time I'd see him in that uniform, or at all. Hours passed. I tried painting to distract myself, but every brushstroke came out wrong. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept checking my phone, waiting for his name to appear. Then finally it buzzed. "Can I come over?" The same words as before, only this time they meant something different. When he arrived, he looked exhausted but calm. His uniform was gone. He wore a plain gray t-shirt, jeans, and that same quiet strength that first drew me in. "Well?" I asked, barely breathing. "They gave me a choice," he said, leaning against the doorway. "Stay quiet, keep my job, or be honest and lose it." I swallowed. "And," he smiled faintly, "I chose me." For a long moment I didn't move. Then I walked up to him, my chest aching with pride and sadness all at once. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be," he said softly. "For the first time, I can look in the mirror and not see a stranger staring back." He took my hand, fingers lacing through mine. "You know what's funny? I spent my whole life protecting people. But you're the one who ended up saving me." I shook my head, tears slipping free. "We saved each other." He smiled, kissed my forehead, and for a moment, everything, the fear, the doubt, the noise, disappeared. That summer, we built something new. Liam left the force quietly, without drama, though word spread through the department anyway. Some officers reached out to thank him. A few, surprisingly, admitted that his courage had made them rethink their own silence. He found work with a community safety program, not a cop anymore, but still helping people, still protecting in his own way. The difference now was that he didn't have to hide who he was while doing it. As for me, I started painting again, not out of pain this time, but out of gratitude. My work changed. The colors were warmer, the strokes looser, freer. I held my first solo exhibit that fall, and when the gallery owner asked about the inspiration, I simply said, "Someone who taught me that love can be brave." Liam came that night, wearing a simple white shirt and a shy smile that didn't belong to the man who once stood outside my door in the rain. He walked through the gallery slowly, stopping at a large canvas near the back. A painting of two figures standing in the soft glow of streetlight, one in a police uniform, the other barefoot, holding a cup of coffee. The title read, "The Night It Rained." He turned to me, eyes glistening. "You painted us." "I did," I said, "because that night changed everything." He stepped closer, his hand finding mine in front of the crowd. No hesitation this time, no hiding, just truth. And as he pulled me into his arms, I realized that the story we'd written together wasn't about forbidden love or rebellion. It was about courage, the courage to be seen. Months passed, and life settled into something beautifully ordinary. Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper, walks in the park, quiet dinners where laughter came easier than words. But sometimes, when the sky turned gray and the rain began to fall, I'd think back to that first night. The knock on the door, the man standing there with a badge and a heart full of walls. If someone had told me then that he'd be the person who would change everything I knew about love, I would have laughed. But life has a way of showing you what you need, often in the places you least expect. One evening, almost a year later, I found Liam on the balcony, staring out at the rain. The same rain that had once brought him to my door. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, slipping my arms around his waist. He smiled, not turning around. "About how different everything looks from here." "From where?" "From the other side of fear." I rested my chin on his shoulder, breathing him in. "Do you regret any of it?" He turned to face me, his eyes soft, steady. "Not a second, because every choice, every risk, every sleepless night led me here with you." I smiled, pressing a kiss to his chest. "You know, I used to think love was supposed to make sense." He laughed quietly. "And now I think it's supposed to make you feel alive." He nodded, looking out into the rain again. "Then I guess we're both finally living." We stood there in silence, the sound of rain blending with the rhythm of our breaths. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. Because the truth was simple, love had already found me. It didn't come with fireworks or grand declarations. It came in the form of a midnight knock, a stranger with tired eyes, and the slow realization that sometimes the person who saves you isn't the one who pulls you from danger. It's the one who teaches you how to see yourself clearly. And that night, the night the cop visited my home, I finally did.